Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
The first time I knew something was wrong was the electric bill. $900 for a house that hadn't run central air in 15 years. I called the utility to check, thinking maybe the neighbor's line got crossed. Nope. Everything matched. I drove straight up to Lake Geneva that afternoon, walked through the front door of my grandfather's house, and found the thermostat set to 82 in the dead of July. Edwin was napping in the den, wearing a flannel shirt, a wool blanket pulled up to his chin like it was January. The TV was on some court show. A coffee cup sat on the floor by his hand, bone dry, crusted. The mail stack was a mess of final notices and glossy real estate postcards. That was the day I stopped pretending the cracks weren't there. Before we start, tell us which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today. Thanks. And now the story. I'm Damian Harper. I'm 57 now, but I'm telling you about the year I turned 36 and learned exactly how far family can fall. My grandfather, Edwin Harper, built a real estate business from nothing on the south side of Chicago. Brownstones, duplexes, a couple of aging strip malls. He had this feel for the ground under his shoes. Said if the bricks didn't talk back, they weren't worth buying. My parents died in a wreck when I was 12. After that, Edwin raised me in that lake house, creaky dock, pine wood walls, the kind of summer silence that stuck in your bones. He took me to school, made me rake leaves, never missed a parent conference. So when the dementia started, slow, sneaky, I didn't want to see it. But by the time I noticed the bills stacking up weird and the same conversation looping every 15 minutes, it was clear. Some days he still knew who I was. Others he just called me the kid. Then came Uncle Douglas, technically my great-uncle, Edwin's younger brother. Everybody just called him Uncle. He'd always been the type chasing the fast win. Syndication schemes in the 90s, restaurant investments in the 2000s, crypto garbage later. Whatever was hot and shallow. Soon as Edwin's memory started to drift, Douglas started sniffing around the lake house. I remember he walked out onto the dock with me one Sunday and said, "It's an illiquid legacy asset, Damian." I said, "It's my goddamn childhood." Turned out Douglas and his wife Sharon were drowning. 2 busted restaurant ventures, 1 half-built lounge in Cicero bleeding cash, and 3 personal credit lines about to light on fire. Edwin trusted me. He told me once on one of his clear days, "You keep this place safe. It's the soul of the family. You hear me?" I heard him. So I made a call. Erica Quinn. We'd gone to college together. Same business law seminar. Dated 1 semester, stayed friends. She became a real estate agent, then a lawyer specializing in elder protection. I didn't sugarcoat it when I called. Told her Douglas was circling and Edwin was losing the thread. She didn't hesitate. Said, "I'll drive up this weekend." We spent 11 weeks building a plan. Quiet. Surgical. Erica helped me document Edwin's lucid moments, get protective paperwork in place. I set up the kind of trust with trigger clauses you only hope you never have to pull. The bait was a fake sale. We'd lure Douglas into trying something shady, catch him in the act. Erica called it a controlled detonation. I just called it keeping my promise. The night we finalized it, we sat in my office over takeout. She slid the last document across the table and said, "We're ready." I looked at her, then at the picture of the lake house on my wall, sunset glowing off the water like an old memory refusing to die. I said, "Let's make him bite." And we waited. I watched through the feed as Erica crossed her legs and leaned back like she did this twice a week, which, technically, she did. The pen cam clipped to her lapel caught everything from about mid-chest level. The angle wasn't perfect, but it was clean enough for court. You could see hands, documents, body language. Douglas entered first, smiling like the room owed him something. Sharon came in behind him wearing a navy dress I swear I saw on a Nordstrom rack clearance rack 6 months ago, and a bag with gold trim and fake crocodile that practically screamed, "Look at me." It looked expensive from a distance. Up close, you could see the edges fraying and a deep scratch near the clasp. Erica stood and shook hands like a pro, warm, polite, with that little pause most people miss. That pause is where people expose themselves. Douglas filled it right away. "We appreciate you squeezing us in," he said. "Time's a factor." Erica smiled without blinking. "We're here now." She opened a folder, pulled out a boilerplate intake form, and set it on the glass desk between them. "I see a power of attorney was provided in advance," she said. "May I review the original?" Sharon reached into the crocodile purse like she'd rehearsed this and laid down a crisp POA with a fresh blue signature. Erica barely glanced at it. "Looks perfect." She said it the way a dentist says, "That's an interesting cavity." Douglas leaned forward, elbows wide like he was claiming the space. "Edwin still signs just fine on his good days. This was signed last week." "Good days?" Erica asked. Sharon jumped in. "He's got a new care team. We've been exploring more intensive support. Memory care, specialized routines, that sort of thing." I muttered into the truck's cab. That's a lie. Edwin hadn't moved facilities. He was still in the same modest senior center in Arlington Heights. Decent care. 3 RNs on the day shift. Smelled like cafeteria coffee and chapstick, not some $12,000 a month therapy retreat. Douglas tapped the desk. "Anyway, we've had an offer. $3.85 million cash. Buyer's an investment group, solid guys out of Oak Brook, but they want a short timeline." 15 days to close. I sat up straighter. Solid guys out of Oak Brook always meant shady LLCS, and maybe a burner phone if you were lucky. Nothing about that sounded real. Erica wrote something on a legal pad and asked, "What kind of contingencies are they requesting? Inspection, title, survey?" Douglas shook his head. "They're good to go. All they need is a clean title and a wire confirmation. Timeline's tight," Sharon added. "That's why we brought this to you." She pointed at Erica like she was doing her a favor. Erica nodded slowly. "Who referred you to me?" Sharon smiled, but only with her teeth. "You came recommended by someone on our HOA board. We're in Wilmette. Name?" Sharon blinked. "Marissa... something. Can't recall the last name right now." Erica didn't flinch, just wrote Marissa on her pad. Then she opened the title folder and pulled out a printout. "I noticed a trust modification on file, dated 13 months ago. Do you know what that refers to?" Douglas's face didn't move, but his right hand twitched. Sharon said, "That must have been an update for long-term planning. We're the primary caregivers, so Edwin wanted to keep things streamlined." I texted Nate while they talked, asked him to dig into the Oak Brook group and any tie-ins to Douglas's old restaurant partners. He pinged back 2 names I already had, circled in red, fronts for busted ventures that never filed a tax return. Sharon kept the chatter going, talking about Edwin's worsening condition, specialist recommendations, and family consensus. "Erica," she said, "we're not doing this for money. We're doing it because it's time to let go of the past and focus on what Edwin needs now." On screen, Erica didn't move a muscle. "I understand. One day to verify POA validity and run full title. Then we'll proceed." Sharon nodded, like she was trying to look like she understood what that meant. She didn't. Douglas pulled out a pen like he was closing a yacht deal and signed the intake form with a flourish. Erica handed him a copy and thanked them both. I watched them leave, Sharon smoothing her dress like she'd just landed something important, Douglas already on his phone. Erica didn't speak until they were gone. Then to the cam. Subject signed. Power of attorney presented. Buyer mentioned. Timeline suspicious. All indicators suggest coercion or fabricated consent. Her tone was clinical. Calm. Like the ER doctor who tells you your leg's broken, but you're lucky it didn't sever. I stared down at the photo of the lake house on my phone. Weathered wood, still water. The same canoe from when I was 13. Then I looked back up at the feed, watching my uncle try to sell the one place that ever felt like home just to crawl out of a mess he'd built with a lighter and a can of gasoline. I muttered, "Go ahead, Doug. Pull the trigger, we'd built the trap. All we needed now was for him to pull it." I pulled into the parking lot at Hillside Manor. Same cracked pavement, Same faded sign. A breeze pushed the smell of mulch and cafeteria food through my window before I'd even killed the engine. The cinnamon rolls were still warm in the passenger seat, boxed and tied with twine like the bakery always did. I used to sneak out early with Edwin on Saturdays when I was a kid. Cicero Avenue before dawn, cinnamon steam and old jokes about the socks. I buzzed in, signed the sheet, and walked down the corridor past the day room where Wheel of Fortune played to a mostly silent crowd. His door was open. He was staring at the ceiling, humming something tuneless and low. His socks were mismatched, but his collar was buttoned clean. He didn't look up when I stepped in. "Got your favorite," I said, holding up the box. He didn't respond, just kept humming, eyes tracing invisible shapes overhead. I sat beside him, opened the box, and waited. It took a minute, maybe two. 1979, he mumbled. That plumber never came back with the flange. Damn job took 2 weeks. Probably skipped town once he got the check, I said. Edwin snorted. Then his eyes focused, like a camera snapping into frame. The whole room changed. His posture straightened. He turned to me like the fog had cleared. "You still watching the lake place?" he asked. I nodded. "Every day." He reached over and grabbed my wrist with a grip that caught me off guard. Old man strong. "Don't let him do it," he said, voice steady. "I won't," I said. "We're locking it down. Paperwork's in place. I'm keeping it safe." He let go. Nodded once, slow, like he needed to feel the words in his bones before letting them settle. He leaned back into his chair, eyes calm, satisfied in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. That trust. God, that trust. We'd set it up 2 years back on a rare, clear day like this one. He sat across from me in my office in Chicago, black coffee in hand, and said, "I want it protected. From anyone using my bad days to screw with the good ones." I called a neurologist that afternoon, got a full evaluation, signed, sealed, capacity confirmed. I had the scan, the letter, and a witness affidavit in the vault before sundown. The clause was surgical. If a power of attorney sale attempt was filed while Edwin lacked capacity, the title flipped instantly into the Edwin Harper Foundation. No human hands needed, no delay. 3 trustees held the key, me, a retired judge named Harmon, who fished with Edwin every summer since the Reagan years, and an accountant named Lila, who still did ledgers in pencil. Last week, Erica had read it line by line with me at her office. She pointed to the clause and said, "This is going to save you." I looked her in the eye and said, "It needs to save him." That same day, back at the firm, Ray, my managing partner, called me into his office. He didn't sit, just tapped the quarterly forecast on the glass wall and said, "You're behind, Damien. Quarter end's near. I need your head in the game." I told him I'd hit my numbers. He nodded once, but I saw the doubt behind his eyes. Truth was, I didn't care if I missed. Not this quarter, not this time. Some things don't fit on a spreadsheet. That night, Nate sent over a dossier, 6 pages stapled crooked, scanned from his kitchen probably. The so-called investment group, Douglas mentioned, tied back to a bar in Elmhurst that never had a liquor license and a warehouse near Cicero that hadn't moved a box in 5 years. One shell company funneled rent to the other. A third paid utilities with cash. Nate wrote in the margin, "All paper, no product, smells like wash money." I stepped out onto my balcony, called Erica on speaker. "We're in deeper water than we wanted," I said. "Then we swim smarter," she replied. There was a pause. Neither of us filled it. The quiet wasn't awkward, just heavy. I slept like garbage that night. My brain wouldn't shut off. I kept seeing the lake house pulling away from shore, the dock splintering loose, and me standing on it holding the rope, watching knot after knot slide through my hand. I woke up sweating before dawn, checked my phone. No calls, no messages. Just that gut-deep feeling that something was about to break. I didn't go back to sleep. Instead, I sat in the kitchen, stared at the dark window, and thought about Edwin's grip. How strong it was, how certain. The place smelled like citrus cleaner and slow failure. Douglas had called it a family business meeting, but I knew before I even parked that it wasn't about family, and it damn sure wasn't about business. His new restaurant sat on Milwaukee Avenue, just north of Logan Square. Slick sign, exposed brick, Edison bulbs trying to sell warmth to a room full of empty tables. A host stand stood like a formality no one ever used. I walked in and spotted them right away. Corner booth, linen napkins, not a single plate on the table. Douglas, Sharon, Brent. That was it. No cousins, no kids, no wives, no family photos. Just 4 chairs and one agenda. Brent barely looked up. He was glued to his phone like a teenager, even though he had to be pushing 50. Technically, Edwin's nephew, which made him my first cousin once removed, but nobody cared enough to use the full label. Growing up, he was just Cousin Brent, the guy who spiked the punch at every reunion and borrowed tools he never returned. I slid into the booth across from Sharon, who adjusted her scarf like I'd brought a smell with me. "Thanks for coming, Damien," she said, voice like she'd practiced it in the mirror. Douglas nodded. "Appreciate you making time. We're all here because we care about Edwin." I didn't answer. Just waited. I knew better than to give them rhythm. Sharon cleared her throat. "His care costs are ballooning. There are new therapies we've been looking into. Specialized memory treatment in Wilmette. State-of-the-art facility. Total monthly cost is $14.08. I folded my arms. He's at Hillside now. $8,450. 3 RNs on day shift, 2 at night, full meds, daily activity calendar. He knows the staff, knows. They treat him right." Sharon's smile tightened. "We want better." Douglas jumped in. "And we've got a buyer." "Cash. 3.85 if we move fast." Brent chimed in without looking up. "That's above market, right?" Douglas ignored him. "Buyer's been vetted." "They can close in 15, I leaned forward. "And who drafted the power of attorney?" Douglas blinked. "An attorney in Naperville." "Name?" He hesitated. "I don't have it on me." Sharon jumped in. "Marvin." Then after a pause, "Martin. Could be Martin." I pulled my phone from my jacket and laid it on the table. 3 years ago, Edwin gave me a durable power of attorney. Witnessed, notarized. Originals in a deposit box on Clark Street. I have full access, legal standing, and a capacity letter signed the day it was executed. Sharon let out a dry scoff. "You know he doesn't even know what day it is anymore." I looked at her, dead on, which is exactly why anything he signed after that day is trash. Douglas shifted in his seat. "We can't afford to stall, Damien. There are penalties if I miss certain dates." I stared at him. "Penalties for what?" He didn't answer. Didn't need to. That sentence wasn't for me. It was for the bank or whatever barstool lender he owed behind that fake smile. I kept my voice steady. "Try to close if you want. Title's going to do something you won't like." Sharon sat up straighter. "You think you're better than us?" I didn't blink. "No, I think Edwin deserves better than this." Brent finally put his phone down. "If the house goes, does the foundation still get paid?" His voice was hollow. Not curious, concerned. He'd clearly heard things and didn't like how they ended. I didn't answer. I stood up slow. "You want to talk care?" "I can upgrade Edwin tomorrow. Private room, personal memory coach 3 times a week. I've already priced it." Sharon's nostrils flared. Brent reached for his water and missed the glass. Douglas just wiped his hands on his napkin like this was a lunch break. He looked up at me, eyes tired. "We're going to proceed, Damien." "With or without you." I leaned in just enough to make sure he heard it clear. "That's the only way you ever move. Without me." And I walked, straight out. Didn't bother to grab a menu or look back. Outside, the sidewalk felt steadier than the booth. I pulled out my phone, thumbed the message, and hit send. To Erica, "They're all in." Prep, Phase 2. I booked a windowless sublet near Western Avenue, one of those hourly rental offices with laminate floors, a coffee maker that coughed more than brewed, and Wi-Fi just good enough to freeze when it mattered. Nate showed up with a milk crate full of documents and a box of granola bars. We didn't speak much. We just started. 2 nights. No music. No TV. Just invoice after invoice, scanned, tagged, cross-referenced. Edwin had 3 LLCs tied to real estate. Basic shells for tax purposes. But over the last 18 months, someone had started feeding them fake expenses like it was a buffet line. Roof patching, $5,000, Nate said, holding up one. Address is a 2-story brick that hasn't had tenants in 4 years. No permit pulled, no inspection follow-up, just paid and filed. Next one was landscaping in February. Edwin's buildings were in the city. Nothing grows in a Chicago February but salt and regret. I checked the billing company's address. It traced to a UPS store in Skokie. Nate highlighted the name. Redden Property Care. He added it to the growing spreadsheet. Security contract came next. Monthly payments to a firm with a badge logo and no working phone number. It was for a building on 83rd that had been boarded up since 2011. Every approval was signed E. Harper in pen that looked too smooth, too steady. Edwin's real signature had been shaky and sharp for the past decade. This looked like something copied off an old lease agreement. By midnight, Nate pointed to a cluster of payouts labeled Care Services. They'd been billed through one of the companies as personal consulting. The checks went to a woman named Deirdre Kent. "Who's that?" I asked. "Google says no one," Nate replied. He dug deeper. DMV records, county leases. Finally found a BMW 5 Series registered in her name, garaged in Winnetka. Her last known employer? A defunct catering business that went under during COVID. "Family?" I asked. Nate tilted his head. "Weird coincidence if not." This Deirdre shares a maiden name with Sharon. I grabbed the photo of Edwin taped above my laptop. I stared at his eyes, calm, quiet, a man who built everything one brick at a time, and said, "We're burning daylight." Next morning, I drove to Hillside and met with the administrator, Alan, a guy in his 60s who always smelled faintly of peppermints and starch. "Quick question," I said. "Has anyone submitted paperwork requesting a transfer or upgrade in Edwin's care?" He frowned. "Not through us." "Why?" "Sharon's been telling people he needs intensive memory therapy. $14,000 a month." Alan blinked. "He's stable. Routine helps him. We've never recommended a facility switch, and if we did, we'd need a medical evaluation, not just a family hunch." I thanked him and asked to see Edwin's current medical list. "I'm not a doctor, but I know what should and shouldn't be there." Second line down, Neurotassel, 160 milligrams compounded, not a brand I recognized. I texted the name to Nate. 10 minutes later, he sent back a screenshot. The supplement was being sold by a cognitive wellness center in Downers Grove. Cash only, no license listed. And guess what? Shared a merchant account with a shell LLC Douglas had used for a restaurant concept that died before launch. That was enough. I called Adult Protective Services from my car, got transferred twice, landed on a woman named Marie with a scratchy voice and zero small talk. I said, "I have documentation, trusts, signatures, financial irregularities, and a power of attorney being used to force a fraudulent sale." She said, "Who's the principal?" "Edwin Harper, 84, early stage dementia progressing. He's being financially manipulated by his brother and sister-in-law." She paused. "You said you had documentation?" "Scans, video, third-party verification, and banking irregularities." "I can send it in 5 minutes." She said, "We'll open a case immediately." I hung up, exhaled, and just sat there, hands gripping the wheel too tight. It should have felt like momentum, but it felt like standing still in a storm, knowing the real hit hadn't landed yet. Erica drafted the affidavit that night. 2 pages, plain language, no fluff. I read it twice, then signed with a hand that shook harder than I wanted to admit. Next day, Ray caught me by the break room. He stood in front of the fridge like a bouncer. "This thing with your grandfather," he said, "is it going to get press?" "Probably," I said. He nodded, lips tight. "Keep the firm's name out of it." I stared at him. "You want me gone? Say it." He didn't answer. Just walked, like I wasn't worth firing, but maybe too risky to keep. That night, I drove to Hillside and sat in my car outside Edwin's room. The windows glowed soft yellow. I could see the edge of his chair through the curtains. He wasn't moving, just resting in the way old men do when the day's work is behind them and the world's trying to pull something stupid. I felt like a guard dog with short legs and a loud bark. Nothing about this fight was fair, but fair doesn't save houses. Fair doesn't protect people who can't sign their names right anymore. My phone buzzed. Erica. Text. "Buyer wants a sit-down. Tomorrow. Bring your spine." I stared at it for a second, then typed back. Reply. "I'll bring 2. We pulled up to the steakhouse at 6:42 p.m. It sat back from the road, low lit with an ego-sized fountain out front, and valet guys who couldn't stop looking at Erica's car like it didn't belong. She drove a dark gray Volvo, clean, paid off, unassuming. They were probably waiting for a Porsche or some flashbox Range Rover. They weren't getting it. The hostess led us to a private room in the back. Glass door, soundproofed walls, overkill lighting. 2 men were already seated at the long table. Buzz cuts, sport coats, posture like they'd been in rooms where getting loud was a bad idea. One had a Patek watch that didn't match the scuffed soles of his loafers. The other wore cufflinks but no tie. Everything screamed money that moved sideways. Sharon was already there, talking fast, laughing too loud. Douglas sat beside her with his jacket folded on the back of his chair and a bead of sweat just beginning to show through his undershirt. He wasn't drinking water. Erica placed a thick envelope on the table and slid it across with a pen on top. "Letter of intent," she said. "Favorable terms, tight timeline, inspection waived, 5-figure earnest deposit wired to escrow already, names withheld by agreement." The men didn't touch it right away. One leaned back and crossed his arms. Sharon gave them a look that said, "Trust me," which meant please bite before this collapses. Douglas picked up the pen and tapped it against the table. "We need to hit the 19th, he said. "If we miss it, He caught himself, scratched his cheek like it itched from the inside out. One of the buyers raised his eyebrows. "You're what?" The air pulled tight. Even the server outside the door must have felt it. Nobody spoke. Sharon snapped the tension with a practiced smile. "Edwin authorized the sale. He still has capacity. He just prefers we handle the details." Erica didn't blink. "Do you have a capacity evaluation dated within 30 days? Sharon's lips pressed thin. "That's not how our family operates." I said, "Then your family's about to hit a wall." One of the buyers opened the letter and skimmed it, while the other finally spoke. "What's the situation with the septic inspection?" Sharon brushed it off. "It's a lake house. We'll do it after closing." The guy chuckled. Dry like a smoker who'd heard this crap before. Real buyers don't chuckle about sewage. Real buyers get nervous. These guys weren't nervous. Erica flipped to the trust page. "This flag here? Title note from a foundation holding instrument? How are you planning to insure over it?" Sharon blinked. "There's no trust." Douglas, without looking up, said, "It's not active anymore." Erica raised an eyebrow, then pulled a single-page supplemental disclosure from her folder. "This covers existing encumbrances, risk acknowledgement, and transaction consent," she said. "It's just formality." Douglas grabbed the pen again and signed without reading it. No hesitation. He signed like he was autographing a menu at a place he thought he owned. The buyers signed next. Initials only, no full names on the signature block. It was theater, and everyone knew it. We stood to leave. One of the men paused near me at the door. "This ain't your fight," he said, voice low and casual, like we were talking about parking spots. I looked him dead in the eyes. "It is now." He gave the smallest grin, then walked. Erica and I made it as far as the parking lot before Douglas followed. He caught me just as I was unlocking her car. "You think he likes you?" he asked. "He doesn't." I turned to face him. "Who?" "The guy who smiled at you. He's not your friend. He's just humoring you. He doesn't care about your grandfather, or you, or that stupid house." I didn't flinch. "The house has a guardian now, one you can't buy." Douglas stepped closer. "Everybody's got a price." I shook my head. "Not him." He stared at me, lips twitching, like he wanted to say something mean, but couldn't find the right weapon. I left him standing there next to a black Escalade with plates that hadn't been updated since Obama's first term. In the car, Erica let out a long breath through her teeth. "I've been holding air for an hour," she said. I pulled the door shut and looked straight ahead. "We got enough," she said. I nodded. "We have enough." The next morning, at 9:12 a.m. sharp, the escrow received a wire. Small amount, just enough to show intent. The packet went through with a copy of the POA and a boilerplate title request. Standard enough to pass, shady enough to signal we were officially in the red zone. That was our fuse. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee, watching the steam curl off the top, when my email dinged. Erica forwarded the title alert. Subject: Initiated. Your move. The trust clause triggered automatically. Edwin's house title jumped. Clean, final, irreversible, to the Edwin Harper Foundation. No approvals needed. No warnings given. One digital transfer logged at 9:16 a.m., time-stamped and certified. Before my coffee stopped steaming, the house wasn't his. It was ours, the Foundation's, locked, guarded, and completely out of Douglas's reach. By 10:30, we had signatures from all three trustees. I met Lila and Judge Harmon at the First Bank of Lake Geneva. Neutral ground. Harmon showed up in khakis and a fishing hat, like he was on his way to a dock instead of a bank meeting. Lila wore a full navy skirt suit and red pen in hand, like always. She read every line twice. "I assume you've read this?" she asked me. 4 times, plus footnotes. She nodded, clicked the pen, and signed. Harmon just said, "Let's box this bastard out," and signed without even reading it. Bless that man. By noon, the DA's Elder Abuse Unit had the full file. Erica sent it herself. Scans, audio, transcripts, video, even a table of contents. It looked more professional than most trial exhibits I'd seen in court. The recordings alone were enough. Sharon had lied, openly and calmly, about Edwin's condition. Douglas said the words, "We need this done fast before it gets complicated," 3 times. They leaned on a POA like it was a gym pass. At 1:40, I got a call from Hillside's administrator, Alan. "Mr. Harper, just so you're aware, someone tried to pull your grandfather's file this morning. 2 people, no ID, no authority letter. You give them anything?" I told them to leave. I'm not a fool. I gripped the phone tighter. "Thank you. If anyone else shows up, call the police and then call me." "Already posted a notice at the front desk," he said, and added a photo of that woman you told us about. That man earned every mint he ever handed out. At 3:15, Nate called from a parking lot in Berwyn. I ran down the shell company, HG Lake LLC. It's tied to a laundering crew. Drugs? Mostly money. They run it through coin-op laundries, bars with no customers, and a pool hall where no one ever plays pool. It's a cash wash. Douglas fed them this deal thinking he'd skim off the top. They're more organized than I expected. Can we link them? No need. One of the steakhouse guys got picked up this morning on a federal wire fraud warrant. Not our case, but it's good leverage. Perfect, I said. Let's keep them squirming. That night, my phone lit up again. Ray from the firm. "You gave your real name on a transaction linked to a criminal complaint." A reporter called I didn't even pause. "Tell them I'm Edwin Harper's grandson." That's all they need to know. You're dragging our firm into this, Damien. No, I'm protecting someone who trusted me. There was a long silence. Then he hung up. Douglas called me 6 times between dinner and sunset. I didn't pick up. On the 7th try, he left a voicemail. Damien, listen. This has gotten out of hand. No one's trying to hurt Edwin. We just needed a way through this mess. I know you think this is personal. Delete. Sharon texted me a paragraph. First half read like a lukewarm apology. Second half threatened to expose inconsistencies in my management of Edwin's financials. I didn't reply. She wasn't owed a response. By 8 p.m., Judge Harmon called in a favor for an emergency hearing, title lock and injunction to prevent any attempts at reversal or appeal. I showed up. Erica showed up. Douglas did too, dragging a cheap briefcase and no legal counsel. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought his molars might chip. Harmon took one look at the file and said, "This trust is properly constructed, appropriately executed, and within the rights of the principal." He banged the gavel like he meant it. Douglas didn't speak. Just walked out stiff like every nerve in his body was buzzing from the loss. By Friday, the DA froze all accounts linked to Douglas and Sharon. Every line, every shell company, every card. The Escalade I'd seen in the steakhouse lot got impounded in a separate sweep tied to a different wire fraud probe. Sharon's cousin, subpoenaed for falsifying invoices. Erica called and said, "You ever think you'd actually see the finish line?" I said, "Didn't expect it to look like this." That night, I drove up to the lake. No music, no talking. Just me and the road and the smell of summer fading into fall. I parked beside the house, left the headlights on just long enough to light up the dock. The boards looked weathered but solid, same as always. I walked out to the end, wind picking up just enough to sting. A storm was crawling across the lake, gray sky bruising fast, lightning somewhere far off. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, watching the water twitch under the clouds, and said one thing out loud. "Thank you." Nobody heard it but the lake. The hearing room was cold and too quiet. Cheap carpet, wood paneling that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s, and a bailiff who stared at the clock more than the docket. But the judge was sharp. No robe fluff, no patience for theater. It moved fast. The DA ran it tight. No slides, no speeches, just exhibits, timestamps, and names. Erica took the stand early, not as Edwin's attorney, her conflict waiver was already on file, but as an agent and fact witness. She kept it clean. Short sentences, nothing extra. She walked through the POA abuse, explained the trust clause, confirmed Edwin's condition with medical documentation. The judge liked her style. You could tell. He nodded as she answered like she'd already memorized the docket in his head. Sharon's lawyer tried a late-game pivot, said Edwin was functionally unreachable, so no provable harm had occurred. His voice was polished, but his hands kept fidgeting with the edge of the podium. Erica didn't blink. She walked him straight into a corner with hillside billing records and a letter from Edwin's neurologist dated 3 months before the POA Sharon had waved around. The letter spelled out that Edwin had full mental capacity that day. The notary stamp from the trust agreement matched. That should have been it. But then Brent called me. First cousin once removed, technically. I hadn't heard from him since the fake family meeting at Douglas's ghost restaurant. He asked one question. "If I cooperate, does it help me?" I said, "Depends what you've got." He sent a signal thread, screenshots, timestamps, names. Sharon had messaged him during the run-up, calling Edwin a walking ATM with a nice view. Said the house would clear everything and then some. She told Brent to just shut up and take the cut. The DA loved it. New ammo. By day's end, the charges hit. Financial exploitation of an elderly person, forgery, conspiracy to defraud, and wire fraud enhancements tied to the escrow activity. 4 counts each for Douglas and Sharon. They were served right there in the hallway, Sharon in heels, Douglas in that same gray sport coat he wore at the steakhouse. Neither said a word. You could feel the spin fall off both of them. Back at the office, Ray called me in. His tone was clipped but dressed up like he was doing me a favor. "Damien, for optics, we're going to ask you to step back from active client work." "For how long?" "We'll revisit once things settle." "What does that mean?" "It means we want to be supportive, but the press is watching." I didn't say anything for a second. Then I stood. "Just say it." "You want me to choose?" Ray didn't answer. He didn't have to. I walked out with nothing but a manila folder and a bad taste in my mouth. They logged it as unpaid leave. No paycheck. Rent doesn't pause. Groceries don't care. But I didn't blink. I'd already made my choice. That week, Erica and I started getting dinner after long days. Not romantic, not defined. But we didn't make excuses either. A cheap Thai place in Oak Park, a burger joint near her office, a booth in the corner, drinks no stronger than Coke. No labels, but we knew. One night I drove up to Hillside with a photo I'd taken of the lake at sunset. Calm water, the dock like an arrow slicing into gold. I handed it to Edwin. He looked at it for a long time. His fingers traced the edge like he could feel the boards under his feet. "That's mine," he said. "It still is." He nodded once. That was enough. Back in court 2 days later, one of the steakhouse buyers walked by in cuffs, hands zip-tied, suit coat wrinkled, no smug grin this time. He didn't look at me, just walked straight ahead with his jaw tight and eyes dead. I watched him pass, then walked out the back exit. On the sidewalk, I found a small envelope in my mailbox. No return. Nate had dropped it by without saying a word. Inside was a flash drive. One file. A scan of a note in Douglas's handwriting. Split with S6040. Keep docs separate. Will burn if needed. The S was underlined twice. They would have turned on each other if they'd gotten even a whiff of money. Instead, they'd sunk together. Douglas took a plea. 3 years in state prison, restitution in the mid-six figures, and a court order banning him from managing anyone's money again. Not just family, anyone. Banks, businesses, trust accounts. It was all locked off. The judge called him a man who used paperwork like a crowbar. Sharon dragged it out longer, hired new lawyers, changed her hair, showed up to every hearing in muted tones and fake humility. None of it mattered the second the jury heard the recording. The one where she called Edwin a walking ATM with a nice view. They went stone cold. 5 years. That's what she got. She turned in her seat and looked at me like I'd picked the number myself. I didn't look away. The lake house never went back on the market. Not once. We converted it. The foundation funded a project I'd been sketching for months. A weekend respite home for caregivers. 2 bedrooms, calm interior, no clutter. A dock you could fish from. A nurse on call if needed, but never in the way. It wasn't some glossy rehab center. It was quiet, familiar, a place people could breathe. We pulled the permits. Erica handled the legal filings. I dealt with the contractor, a guy named Jeff, who actually showed up when he said he would and didn't upsell me on custom fixtures or heated towel racks. We kept it simple. Grab bars in the hallways, a ramp to the front porch, railings to the dock, a side path poured in clean concrete with space for wheelchairs or tired feet. I remembered what Edwin used to say every time he walked me to the water. "Make the path clear, kid. Don't trip people with good intentions." On opening day, he had one of his good mornings. He wore his old wool cap and that threadbare gray jacket with the fraying pocket seams. Judge Harmon met us by the dock, shook Edwin's hand like it was 1991, and told him he looked sharp. Edwin grinned. "I don't know who you are," he said, "but that handshake's familiar." Erica handed him the scissors. Bright red handles, safety edges. He snipped the ribbon in 2 careful clips and said, "Keep it open, kid." I nodded. "Yes, sir." A few reporters had shown up. Nothing big. Local paper. A guy from the Tribune who mostly covered zoning meetings. They asked me for a quote. I kept it simple. "We're just honoring what he built." Erica added, "and protecting who it was meant for." No one clapped. That wasn't the kind of day it was. But a few heads nodded. That was enough. Brent showed up late, parked a ways down the road, and stood next to his car. He didn't come any closer, just raised a hand in a half wave and waited. I saw him. Didn't wave back. He's got a long road to walk, and I'm not the one who's going to carry him through it. A week later, the firm called. Ray said, "We'd like to bring you back. Probationary, part-time, until we're through the fiscal year. Optics have cooled down." I said I'd think about it. I didn't think long. I took the offer, but not like they expected. I stayed part-time and split my week. 2 days at the firm, 3 days with Erica, working pro bono elder fraud cases through the foundation. Cases like Edwin's, people with no kids, people with too many, people getting pushed around on their bad days by relatives who saw a soft spot and went digging. The first family to stay at the house came from Joliet, mother with early onset Alzheimer's. The son was a carpenter. The daughter-in-law was exhausted. They stayed for 3 nights. On the last morning, I found the husband on the back porch, still in his jeans, sitting in a folding chair next to his father-in-law. "I slept right here," he said, "all night. First full night's sleep I've had in 9 months. He didn't smile when he said it. He just looked out over the lake like something in him had finally settled. That was the point. Edwin had more bad days now. They came quicker, stayed longer. There were mornings he wouldn't speak at all, and afternoons he told stories about people who'd been dead since Reagan. But every once in a while, the lights came on. He'd look at me, squint for a second, then grin and say, "There's the kid," like I'd just walked in from raking leaves. Then he'd ask about the dock. "It's there," I always said, "just like you left it." He'd nod and lean back, the question answered, the memory secure for another loop. Douglas wrote to me from prison, sloppy ballpoint letters that bounced between guilt and grievance, one paragraph apologizing for getting desperate, the next blaming me for cutting him out. I never answered. I kept them in a shoebox in the back of my closet, under a pair of hiking boots I never wore. Some things don't get a reply. Sharon's sister called once. No intro, just launched right in. "You ruined a family." I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "That family was ruined the day they treated a man's life like a ledger." She hung up without another word. Erica and I never made a speech about being together. We didn't have to. She kept her key in a ceramic bowl by my front door. I kept mine in her top drawer, beside an old tape measure and 3 unpaired socks. We cooked. We sat on the porch. We walked Edwin's corridor every Sunday, even when he didn't know who we were. We started the Harbor and Hearth Fund through the foundation. Small grants, fast disbursements, no red tape. $2,000 for a hospital bed, $900 for a part-time home aide, $300 to fly someone across state lines to see the one doctor who still gave a damn. It wasn't glamorous, but it filled a hole we knew too well. A few weeks ago, the APS investigator called me, same woman who opened Edwin's case. She said, "We used your file in our statewide training. Investigators are looking at family money differently now." I told her, "Good. Keep pressing." The lake house smelled like cedar again, cedar and coffee. We hung old photos in the front hallway. Edwin and my grandmother at the outboard motor, both grinning like they'd just stolen the boat. You could hear the nostalgia from the people who saw them. One guy said, "Looks like someone who didn't take crap from anyone." I said, "That's accurate." Sometimes I stood at the edge of the dock, hands in my pockets, listening to the water slap the pilings just like it used to. I thought about the night Douglas stood under the parking lot lights and said, "Everybody's got a price." He still didn't get it. There's a price for not protecting what matters. It's not money. You pay it in shame, in sleep, in how your name sits in other people's mouths after you leave the room. You pay it when your grandfather can't tell you apart from the nurse, and all you have left is the gut-deep knowledge that you either held the line or you didn't. I didn't save everything. Nobody does. But I saved the part Edwin asked me to watch, the place that held us together long enough for me to become the man who could. Would you confront family to protect an elder's home, even at personal cost? Comment, like, and subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps us going.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.